Today's guest is Theresa Lease. Theresa is a breathwork facilitator and she's a recently certified energy healer, and she can do both at once, which is pretty incredible. Theresa was on about a little over a year ago, I think, and I met her when she came on as a guest. I didn't know Theresa until we had the conversation on the podcast. And that's one of the things I love about my podcast is I get to know people, and sometimes the relationship goes further after the podcast. So with Theresa, I asked her if she would come into my second half Spark School and do breath work for my students. And I had probably 2 or 3 sessions before I met Theresa. And I just thought, I want to find somebody to bring in and let my students experience it. And so it's fun. It's fun because I don't think any student who I've exposed breathwork to ever had it before. It's been their first time every time. And it's been so much fun to see them and witness their experience, because we get on Zoom and we're on virtual with Theresa, and then she goes through her thing. And it's one of those things where physically you lie down on a couch or the floor, whatever's comfortable. And she, as the facilitator, wants to see her clients. So while we're not in person with her, she can still see us. So you have to set your computer or your phone or whatever you're on Zoom with in a way so she can see you. So we're all there. And then, of course, we don't pay attention because during the breathwork session, your eyes are closed and you're not looking at the camera. You're just hearing her. And she has a playlist of music. And so that's kind of the environment of a breathwork session that's virtual. But then after we're done, after the 30-minute session, it's usually about 30 minutes, then we get on and we're like, what happened? What came up for you? Or what did you experience? And so it's really fun to hear those things. And even subsequently after a couple of days, because now that she's doing energy healing, the last 2 sessions we've done with her, she's wanted to know about the healing. And she asks, what do you have that you would like healed? And so she likes to follow up to see if there were results from that. So it was super, super cool. We talk about that in the podcast interview. And yeah, it's great to have her back. And I thought, yeah, this would be a great topic since the second half Spark School is open for enrollment this week. And if you've never done breath work, you should look her up if you're interested, because she is amazing and she knows what she's doing. And now that she has this extra skill of energy healing, it's just a breathwork session that is like the extra level, the like the AAA, the 5-star breathwork treatment. So so let's get to the interview and hear all about what breathwork is. Maybe you've never heard of it before, what it is, and some of the experiences that I and my students have had. All right, so here's Theresa. Welcome to another episode of Living Your Sparked Second Half. And I have a special guest with me today, Theresa Lease. Hello, Theresa.
Hello. So happy to be here.
I know. I'm happy to have you. So I've gotten to know Theresa, and believe it or not, one of the things I love about having guests on is that I learn new things, number one, but I get connected to people who are pretty cool and have expertise in things I don't know about, and sometimes I need. And so Theresa is one of those people. She is a breath work facilitator, and I think has gotten more certifications because you're doing healing now with that, right?
Yes. Energy healing and life coaching. Yep.
Yes. And so she is phenomenal. Let me tell you, I've had a few experiences, I should say, with breath work. And I love you so much because I really get results when I do it with you. And I also like it because we're similar in age.
Yes.
Yes. And so,
yes, perfect.
Yeah. And I've brought her in and introduced her to my students, and she's done group sessions with me and my students. And it's nice to have a woman that is relatable And I also like the fact that you pivoted later in life.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
completely. Yeah, big
Yeah.
time.
And so your story is it can resonate with people who are searching for something new, to find a new purpose, to find new meaning, to find like what is in my next chapter. And maybe breathwork facilitating is something they want to do. But the thing with breathwork that I find, and Theresa can explain the science behind it, but it is a tool that allows you to connect with the voices within. And they're not the bad voices, they're the good voices. They're the voices that we do not hear because we are so caught up in our busyness. And so, why don't we start? First of all, Theresa, introduce yourself, just a little background, and then can you share the science as to why, when I have a breathwork session, I get these amazing downloads. I call them downloads, but they're just I feel like they're messages from my soul.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So starting with my background. So I got divorced after a 20-year marriage, and that was very devastating to me. I had just, you don't plan to get divorced when you get married, but it happened and it needed to happen and it was a good thing. But,
In retrospect, I
yes, in
guess.
retrospect, after you
Yeah.
get through all of the
So,
difficult parts
so
of
was
it.
that a shock?
It was a shock that I was the one that decided something had to be done. It wasn't him, it was me, but it was me because of him. I mean, I just got to a point where I knew I couldn't stay, both for my physical health and my mental health, and for that of my kids. And it was just a brutal decision because I never ever saw myself as someone that would choose divorce. So it was hard for a long time after that. I just had a lot of guilt and sadness. And even though it gave me partially what I wanted and needed for myself and my kids, it also took away a huge portion of things that I valued. And you just get really thrown. 20 years is like a lifetime.
Yeah.
And we had moved a number of times, I think 7 actually in those 20 years. So, your life is very fragmented. I had a few friends all over the place, but nobody really deep because we weren't in places long enough.
And
But eventually,
how long did you stay in that indecision
in
space?
the indecision before getting divorced, probably like the last 3 years were very tenuous. And I held on because we actually got transferred back to the place where we met. And I was thinking, okay, this could be a God thing, that we're going to come full circle and things will improve. So I made that last move with him to the place where we began. And literally within 4 months, I just knew that I couldn't do it anymore. I was having migraines all the time. I was like 110 pounds. I couldn't eat. I couldn't
Not living
function.
your best life.
Not living my best life. No.
It's so
And
funny. I
so,
asked you that because I talk about the scared settler where we just like we're stuck in indecision and we're too scared to make a move because we're think worst case scenario. Oh, I won't have the
right.
income and people are going to talk about me and I'm going to hurt my kids and all these things. Some true because your kids, even though mine were adults at the time, yeah, it's hard. Divorce is hard. There's no lie in that. But I will say that I was in like a 3 year from where I knew and I waited and I waited and I was too scared and I was just settling.
Yeah.
When you said 3 years, I was like, oh my God, that must be a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of magical. I mean, obviously we had problems long before that, but you just kind of keep churning away, and not every season of your marriage is pleasant or
Yeah.
fun, or there's sometimes when you're giving more or he's giving more or whatever. So you have to just to be in a long-term relationship, you have to weather those kinds of things.
Yes.
And it just finally got to the point of I didn't have any more left in the tank to give anybody. And I knew that I had to just save myself and save my kids from what I felt was just an untenable situation.
Yeah.
And not all his fault. I'm not saying that. He had his own issues and we tried, and it just didn't happen for us. And
Yeah. When did
so
your
you have to move on.
headaches stop?
They went on actually for quite a while after that. It's been a issue sort of on and off since then. But in the last probably 3 or 4 years, it's been really much better.
Mm.
So that took a lot. I actually ended up going to Costa Rica and doing an ayahuasca journey. And that
Oh,
is what actually stopped the headaches. I was at a point where I couldn't even be at work anymore. My head just was hurting so much. And I'd heard about ayahuasca and how effective it was for all kinds of different things. And I had tried Botox injections and all of the things, and nothing was working, and not even breath work, because I was doing that during the same time. It just wasn't enough to get me past it. So the ayahuasca really made a huge difference.
yeah, that is incredible. Did you go to that retreat? There's a
I
real
did.
well-known.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was in Rhythmia. Rhythmia was the name of the retreat center in
Rhythmia,
Costa
yeah.
Rica. And I would highly recommend it if you feel that ayahuasca is right for you. It's out there.
It's intense.
Yes,
It's intense.
you have
It's
to
like a
know that this is
4 day
like
where you're kind of with are they monks?
shaman. They're
Shamans.
shaman.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, there's purging,
Yes.
physical purging that goes with it. But I mean, again, it's similar to breath work, because in breath work, you can have psychedelic experiences. I will say that I never have, but I also did not have a typical psychedelic experience with ayahuasca. I did not get the colors and the visions and things like that are very common, but I did get like the messages of going easier on myself and
Mhm.
things like that, granting myself more grace and more room to make mistakes. I think I just grew up as a perfectionist, and it's just so many women are that way. We think it's a protection. If I'm perfect, they'll love me. If I'm perfect, I'll get the job. If I'm
Yeah.
perfect, I was just striving so hard for this constant perfection. And I mean, you think about that and it makes my head hurt right now. Like you can't do it. You're kind of always tensed up trying to be perfect.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that takes you away from who you really are,
oh,
right?
absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
we're all
We weren't
imperfect.
meant to be perfect. We were
No.
meant to have a shadow side to inform us and to grow and learn from. So I've learned a lot.
Yeah. I'm loving that we're going here because what this says to me is that, and I'm glad the way you answered that when you left, your headaches didn't go away necessarily. They were still there because we
Mhm.
think that's the answer. All our
Yeah,
problems are going to go away
right. This is going to
when
solve everything.
when we remove the external, but we still have external that we're dealing with, and it's the internal that
Right.
we need to focus on, go
Exactly.
inward to fix that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that is
As within, so without. So yeah, you definitely have to take responsibility for what's going on inside of me. And that's why breath work is really effective, because it first of all, it shuts off the thinking mind. So you don't have that monkey mind that a lot of people call it that. So it tends, for most people, it will shut that down. So you don't have those crazy thoughts going through your head through the whole session. It takes a little while, but
yeah.
most people do get there where their mind really quiets. And I have to say, breath work, it's the best for getting my mind to quiet down still. I mean, I
Yeah.
meditate, I walk, I do all kinds of self-care things like that, I get value out of every single thing. But for cutting out the monkey mind, breath work is by far the
Yeah.
best for me.
Yeah, me too. I wonder if it's because we were talking, Theresa and I, before I recorded or started recording. And one of the things we were talking about is there's different modalities. And so that's one of the things I wanted to say is different things work for different people. And for me, breath work, like Theresa, has been super effective. And I've tried other things. Like one thing I've tried is tapping. And I've
Uh-huh.
met people who have had profound experiences with tapping. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it does nothing for me. It's like irritating to me. So I'm like, but I want people to be exposed to it at my program,
Right.
my expansion program. I offer that as an option.
Uh-huh.
But for me personally, and I have such the monkey mind. So I wonder if breath work is a good monkey mind
It is.
tool. And so I'm
It
so glad you said
definitely
that.
is.
That makes so much more sense.
Yeah. And when the monkey mind quiets down, then you can hear the intuition. You can hear that quiet voice within. And that's another thing that I love is that intuition. A lot of people are like, well, how do I know if it's intuition or if it's just my mind feeding me more of the same bad stuff? And I kind of love the explanation that intuition is always soft and quiet and there's never urgency. Whereas monkey mind or our regular thinking is always going to have an urgency component to it. If you don't do this by this date, this is going to happen and it's going to be bad. The quiet voice, the intuition says, it's just like a little question. What if you tried that? Like it can be that simple. What if you tried that? Or what if you tried painting? I've never painted anything in my life. And because of that, we tend to dismiss it because it's soft. It doesn't shout. And we're living in a paradigm now where everything is being shouted.
And everything is urgent.
Yeah, everything is urgent and
On
the end of
demand.
the world.
Yeah.
It's just frenzy. And intuition is not that. Intuition is very soft and quiet and assured, and you can ignore it very easily, but probably negative things are going to happen, and you'll find out that it will. It's still there. You've just sort of buried it because it's not convenient often. It's not what we necessarily want to hear, or we think that we're going to hear. So it's easy to discount, but it's quiet. And that's kind of how it's quiet and there's no urgency.
So how did you find breath work? Because I always like to hear the backstory in terms of this was a late in life thing that you started. It wasn't something that you did when you were younger. And was it for help for yourself?
Yeah, initially it started off that way. I actually heard a podcast interview. It was Hay House that was doing like a week or 10-day summit or something. And there was this breathwork facilitator that was on there, and he was just going on and on about all these amazing things that it did. And his enthusiasm for it was so amazing that I was just like, oh my God, I have to figure out what this is. And I actually looked him up and he was my trainer. So I did my training.
That's how that you're in your purpose, right?
Yeah, it was easy.
The way he expressed his enthusiasm and excitement and was bringing people in, and he's doing what he's meant to do. And then you were brought in, and then you learned it. So was that you? So you were listening to it, and at that moment you were just going to try it, or you were like,
I just wanted to find out more about it. I'm trying to remember. It's been a while now. If I just did, because he had a weekly online session for $25 or something like that. And I think that I did that. And then he also had something on his website where you could, for a relatively small amount of money, you could get his recording of a couple of breathwork sessions. And I got that, and I just really liked it. I liked the way I felt afterwards. And it is a challenge. I want to say that up front for anybody who hasn't done it before. It's almost like a physical workout in terms of you're breathing in a particular style, and it takes effort.
Why it's called breath work.
Yes, it's not breath play, it's breath work. Yes, exactly. Yeah. But again, like I could not do it without his instruction. Like I could never have gotten through it. Especially in the beginning, my body would just get so cold. I would have blankets next to me. I was weighted blankets. I was pulling so much on. And I just think about it now, which that the cold rarely happens to me. And it's just so interesting the way our body processes trauma. I'm sure that's what it was doing. And that's another great benefit of breath work. It processes trauma. Trauma is stored in our bodies. Any traumatic event, we may think that we're over it in our minds. We're not thinking about it anymore, but it's stored somewhere. It's in your shoulder. It's in your hip. It's in your tissue. And breath work is so effective at it over oxygenates the blood. And so it clears things. And that's, I think, what got me so excited about it was that I felt a physical difference. And so then I just wanted to continue in with it and went on and did all of his training.
Yeah. And it gets you out of, and I get confused on the terms. Is it the parasympathetic because
Yes, it puts
it
you into parasympathetic instead of sympathetic. Sympathetic is fight or flight, fawn, freeze, all of those go in there. Parasympathetic is the rest and digest. And it's also where our body goes into an alkaline state. And when your body is in an alkaline state, it can heal physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of those things. Your body heals when it's in an alkaline state, and breath work does that.
yes. Yes, acidic state is like cells love cancer cells, I know. Bad
Yes, yes,
cells love, they thrive in that acidic environment. That's why
yes.
nutrition is important too. But yeah, so why don't we talk about, do you have any personal experiences you want to share with results from breath work? Because I can share a couple that I've had, my students have had, because, and I do want to expand a little bit on what Theresa said about it is hard work. I was telling her, I don't think I could do breath work by myself. I need a facilitator to do it because you kind of, when it starts to get hard and before you get into you after, is it like 3 minutes into it, you
Mm-hmm.
kind of forget the hardness. You kind of get into this rhythm of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But
It usually takes what the first song because it's done to a playlist. Breathwork is
yeah,
done to
that's
a
great
playlist.
too. The
Yeah.
playlist
And
song.
I'm very intentional about the songs that I pick for the playlist based on what I may know about the group that I'm
Yeah.
doing it for.
Yeah.
So toward the end, I go toward more sort of empowerment songs
Yeah.
and things like that.
That can
And
make you
those are
cry.
yeah, all of it can make you cry. And that's another
Yeah.
amazing thing. It
Yeah.
processes emotions. It helps you process emotions. So if you have some emotion that's been suppressed and you likely don't even, you're not aware of it. You don't know that you're suppressing this emotion because you've been
Mhm.
doing it for such a long time, maybe your
Yeah.
entire life since childhood.
Yeah. So
So
yeah, so uh, I feel like when I'm doing it, that first 3 minutes, if you can imagine holding a plank for 3 minutes,
yeah,
that's really hard.
yes,
And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And then all of a sudden I kind of get into this groove. I just call it a
yes,
groove. And I
yeah,
remember as I asked you one time because I said, I get results, but sometimes, and I know it's just my analytical brain like trying to step in, but it's I feel like I'm doing it wrong. It's I'm not doing it wrong. Oh, she told me. Oh, I'm like not on the pace, and or I'm thinking I'm not. But then you get it to a point where you kind of forget that it doesn't matter if that makes
right.
sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So the mind is doing that because it's unfamiliar and the brain's job is to protect you from anything dangerous. And it views unfamiliar as dangerous. So that's why the mind resists it so much. Typically for what we say is like the first song. Most songs are 3.5 minutes,
Yeah.
whatever. But then as you keep doing it, those thoughts tend to fall away and your body does sink into that groove, and that's where the good stuff really comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can share a couple of
Yeah,
stories.
please do.
The one that was really profound, I don't know if I've told you this before, but I was, and it might not have been with you, it might have been before I met you, but I was having trouble allowing my students to get emotional. You like,
Mhm.
they start to get and I know that the transformation is in
The
sometimes the
discomfort.
turmoil, yeah, and that needs to be processed. But I'm a really positive person who's always wanting to make people smile and always wanting to make people happy, right? And
Yep,
so as a
fix it.
coach, it was a very big struggle for me when I started to see somebody, I ask them a question and the tears would start to come and they start to get emotional, and I'd quickly try to help them through it or it was hard for me to sit back and give them space, and
Hmm.
sometimes they just need space because they're starting to process stuff in that moment.
Right.
And so I had a breathwork session. I think I had just had a coaching session where somebody had needed me to give them a little more space, and I felt like I rushed them through it.
Hmm.
And so I said my question, and I think and that you're good at this, prompt us for what do you want through this, what messages are you looking for, what answers would you like to find. And so my question before I went into that was, why can I not let my students experience their emotions? Why am I rushing them through it? And my father came to me in the breathwork session. I'm probably gonna get
Yeah.
emotional with it. But
Yeah.
my father died suddenly, and he was just a wonderful guy, big influence in my life, funny guy. But I remembered, and he reminded me, because he came to me, he reminded me when he was very young, he was put in foster care. And he was put in foster care. His mother had TB and tuberculosis. And so she couldn't care for him. And it was a very bad experience for him for a couple of years. I don't even know. He wouldn't talk about it. I just knew he did this.
Sure.
I remember he talked about this one couple who was the best couple. So I think he went to few different places. I don't know
Mhm.
if he was abused or what, but I would guess maybe he was, but I think he had blacked it out. And my whole life, he was funny. He was a jokester. He nicknamed everything, but he was also almost a critical. He would name the next door neighbor the Blands because
Yeah.
they were bland. Um, so but he was very dry witted, but he was also kind of would make fun of other people, and but in a way that nowadays it would be like, oh my god.
Yeah.
But then you didn't think about it, and then it would be funny. It would always be funny. So
Yes.
we never were sad, which is a kind of a nice house to be in. But anytime you got sad, there was a joke. Anytime you got sad, you were pushed through it to the other side, right?
Oh, wow. That's a great realization to come to, though. And
Yes.
also that whatever happened with him, like trauma is transferred through the generations.
Mm.
It actually affects your DNA. So, so it physically went to you, besides just the behavioral aspect of living in that sort of environment. It was likely like programmed into you at birth, in a sense, because that was his trauma, and the traumas will come down through the generations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing I like to say is break your generational trauma with breath work.
And
You
ask.
can do that.
Yeah, I did not go into that saying, because I had no idea. So I didn't say, Dad, what do you think? But I think if you do want to connect with somebody on the other side, if you ask them a question, I think it's likely that connection will happen in a breathwork session.
It's certainly possible. It is absolutely possible. And one of the reasons that it is possible is because it's basically like you're setting an intention. I would like to get advice from or hear from so and so. And the intention gives your thinking mind something that it can do. So it likes having an intention to pull it through the session. And that intention kind of opens the aperture for new things to come in.
Yeah.
So
The
I
universe
usually,
hears it and says,
yeah,
yes, let's
exactly. Yeah,
help
you've
here.
created an
Yeah.
opening.
Yeah, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, and so I think often when something we're stuck with uh is, and I think it's important we reflect, why did I act like that, or how could I be better? And you go forward with that, and then we just know the reason why that we didn't know before. And that's why I say the answers are within us. You just need to figure out how to
Yes.
get to them. But I didn't know, but it helps so much that
Yeah.
now I know why I'm pushing through. Now I know we don't have to have a joke here. We don't have to make the person happy here, because there is an experience which my father unfortunately probably never got to process that
Right.
grief, that sorrow,
Yeah.
yeah.
That likely the time that he was alive and the fact that he's a man, they can't have anything that shows any sort of sign of weakness. So
Yeah.
that was very big in those generations. I mean, it still is. Men have their own difficult things to work through for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I had my student recently, I think it was 2 sessions ago that we did, and her dog died. And I think we talked about this because I've had her on my podcast. I think we talked about it in another episode, but her dog died, and she was devastated, lives alone, and it
Mm-hmm.
was her baby, older, but these dogs don't live forever, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes they're gone too soon, but she was pretty sad. pretty sad. And so
Of course.
she was waiting, and we get older and we think, oh, do I really want another dog? I don't know if I really want a puppy. Don't want to go through that. So anyways, we have a breathwork session, and after the breathwork session, Theresa said, well, what was the experiences? Did anything come up for anybody? And she said, well, I thought about my dog who died, and she didn't think anything of it, but she said, it just came to me. I just was in the space of whether the dog connected to her or her thoughts just connected with that, which she missed her dog. I don't know, but
Yeah, she could have been grieving. It's a
yeah,
very good way to process grief too.
yeah,
That probably did come up for her as something that her body knew it needed to process.
yeah. And so we left it at that. Oh, she thought about her dog. 2 days later, she messages me and says, you are not going to believe this. She said, I got a message from somebody who has a dog who asked me if I could take the dog. And the dog was the same kind of dog that she had.
I
It was
just
like,
love those stories.
holy
That's
crap.
so
Oh my
amazing.
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
It
almost like her
doesn't
old,
get
yeah.
any more synchronicity than that.
It was like her old dog was saying, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that so much.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I'm
Now,
telling you,
and now we have
amazing
calls, and
thing.
I see her little dog sitting on her lap, and it's so cute. And it's not a puppy, so it's, she doesn't have to
It filled all the
housebreak
things.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Without her even asking for it, it filled all of her needs.
Yeah.
Because the universe always knows better than we do.
Yeah.
Always. It's
Yeah.
just hard to sit back and trust and rely on it.
Yeah. And I like to say too that I think you're always given what you need in these
Yes.
sessions. And I
Yes.
remember one session you said, what do you want? And I said to you, I want peace, because I was feeling very in a swirl at the time. I don't
Hmm.
remember what was going on. I just think I had such a full plate, and
Yeah.
I felt like I wasn't taking the time that I needed to take
Uh-huh.
to relax, which is a problem I have. It's just kind of like my nature. If
Sure.
I really have to force myself to do these habits that help me to
Yes.
settle and to be calm, which is why I love breath work. But I said, I just need peace. Remember, well, I don't even remember because I don't know what happened, but I just know that I did the breathwork session, and we got near the end. And the next thing I know, I look up and everybody's off the Zoom call because we were on the computer, but we're laying down. So we're all connected, but we're kind of in our own little world. And it was like 45 minutes later. And I'm like, where did everybody go? What happened? Oh my God. Did I fall asleep? I'm like hosting the session, and I friggin' fell asleep. Fortunately, I think you had the controls with Zoom. But so I messaged afterwards. I was like messaging everybody, what happened? I got the
I
peace
do.
I
I
needed.
do remember that. I do remember that because you were awake like for the whole session, and it wasn't until the very end when I like take you through the moments and do a little meditation. I always end with a sort of a poem to meditate on or to sort of sink in that time period. And there was some time in that where your arms quit going up and you were gone.
I was. It was like
Yeah.
lights out.
Yeah.
And I got a nice little nap there, which I needed. Talk about relaxing and getting peace.
Yes, it does. It gives you
Like,
what
that
you
was
need.
amazing. That was amazing. All right. So you
It's
have a couple things. Let's wrap up. You've got some things that people can go through, which I love. I always
yeah,
like to
yeah. I
have like
mean,
actions for them to take after the.
yeah. So obviously I say do breath work as much as you can. When I started, I was doing it like 3 or 4 times a week, which is a lot, but I think I needed it. Like I was called to do it. And so I kept doing it. But generally speaking, if you do want to start, it is a practice. It's not something, it's just like exercise. You can't go for an hour and a half hike one day and figure you're good for the whole month. You have to be regular about it. So, like once a week is a really good practice. But in general, the breath that you have with you all the time can do so many things for you. So, even just taking 3 deep belly breaths and letting a sigh out on the exhale, it sounds so minor, but belly breathing is much different than chest breathing. your body gets oxygenated better with deep belly breathing. And most of our breathing throughout the day is short and shallow. So you actually have to think about taking a conscious breath into your belly. So a deep belly breath, and then a sigh on the exhale. Ah. And that sound, it's a signal to our old ancient brain of safety and relaxation. When your brain hears a sigh, it knows it's safe. It's not got to go running from a tiger. So 3 conscious breaths, sighing on the exhale, even like before you give a presentation or before you have a difficult conversation with someone or whatever, that can really bring your nerves down, get you centered, get you in a confident, good place. So 3 deep belly breaths with the sigh on the exhale is one tip.
Yeah. And let me say, because I
Yeah.
think this is important, a belly breath is when you can feel your belly grow.
Yes.
When you feel, so that's really important to feel down there, because I think so many people are not doing that. And like you said, it's very shallow. And I was at a retreat, and I got called up to a room, and they took me through an exercise, and they said, take a deep breath. And I did. And they were like, no, a belly breath. And I was like, well, take a deep breath. And the person actually had to come up to me and say, no, breathe again. Because I was only deep breathing in my chest.
Your chest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what's so beautiful about breath work, or the type of breath work that I teach, is that it's all done with a belly breath. And so you get used to that feeling of expanding your stomach and letting that diaphragm drop so you can really fill out. You do want to, and that's another really great tip, is put a hand on your belly, a hand on your belly and a hand on your chest, and you'll see where you're breathing, because you'll see what's moving.
Yeah. We're all so used to holding our tummies in.
Yeah, holding our tummies in, and
we do
and
not
holding
our
breath
bellies
too. Yeah. All of those things. Yes. And then another tip is to hum. And humming is kind of it's actually a form of sound healing. The brain really likes a hum, and the human voice is like the most healing sound that there is for a human. So you're sort of providing that to yourself when you're humming.
I love that.
Yeah.
I hum a lot in the car to songs. And then my daughter, my younger daughter in particular, she now doesn't live with me anymore, but she used to complain about it. So now if I ever hum and she complains, I'm going to tell her it's my self-healing.
Yes. Yes. Maybe you can get her to hum with you.
Yes, I'll tell her. It's my breathwork facilitator said that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, those are a couple of tips to help you. If you can't do a full-blown breathwork session, try those things, but obviously do a full-blown breathwork session.
Yeah. And do you recommend humming without music or humming with music, or does
you can anytime after you're done with your meal? Like I often will dance around my kitchen a little bit when I'm done eating, and that's also really good for the glucose. It helps keep that straight and not spiking. So yeah, just dance around your kitchen, hum a little bit, do it in your bathroom, totally naked. I've done that. It sounds ridiculous.
I think I'll have my robe on. I do not like to be naked.
Freeing. It's very freeing. So, yourself.
My parents were nudists, so isn't that funny? So, but that's not my choice. My first choice is robe on. But that's a whole other podcast episode. I think I talked about it once. But yes. All right. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you. You'll be helping my next cohort of students. Yes. They love you.
I'm looking forward to that as well. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Living Your Spark Second Half podcast. If you'd like to watch my guest interviews, you can find the video version of this podcast on my Not Your Average Grandma YouTube channel. Also, you can check out what I have going on at the moment by going to my website at notyouraverage.grandma.com, or find me on Instagram or Facebook at notyouraverage.grandma. If you like this episode, please mention it to a friend, and don't forget to leave a review so I know the topics you like best and can bring you more of that content in upcoming episodes. Last but not least, remember to always listen to that inner voice that will never steer you wrong, and make living from the most sparked place possible your biggest priority. When we do that, we make the world a better place.